Welcome again, excuse me, to Joe Stunner Boxing. I hope you're having a good Sunday. The weather is out over here in the UK, nice and hot. But I wanted to talk about something, an issue that was raised, a question, if you like, that was raised by one of my subscribers, Boxing Monkey, his name is, or her name is. Good name, good. Boxing Monkey. I made a video, actually, and it was in reply to something I said during that video, which was that I felt that defeats don't necessarily matter, that you can learn from defeats. Boxing Monkey said, yeah, but what about, you can fight the very best all the time. You can not duck anyone. But if you lose in every fight, I mean, surely, what I think he or she was getting at was there has to be some sort of balance, and I agree with that. And the example that Boxing Monkey used was George Kambosos. Now, let's just do a quick recap, just to refresh our memories about Kambosos. He did a bit of globe-trotting, didn't he? He fought in America, Britain. I think he fought in Greece because he's Greek heritage. Obviously, Australia, where he's from. And he scored a couple of decent wins. Mickey Bay back in 2019. That was a 10-round split decision. Then he got another split over 12 rounds against Lee Selby, former champ at a lower weight. And then he got his massive opportunity against Teofimo Lopez, and that was in 2021. And he was a rank underdog. And as you probably know, it was a fantastic performance by Kambosos. You can talk all you like about Lopez, being injured or unwell or whatever, well, then don't fight. It's dead simple. What's your team doing letting you fight? What's your promoter doing if you're not well, unless you're hiding it completely from someone, in which case, I mean, it's unlikely you can do that, actually, if you're working very closely with your team. They'll spot something. But regardless of all that, Kambosos scored a fantastic away win and, picked up, what was it? Was it the WBO, and WBO titles? And also there was a secondary WBC title. So he's walking around saying, I'm pretty much undisputed. When you can debate all that crap. I mean, to me, it was who you beat, And yeah, he picked up a load of belts, and it was a legitimate win as far as I'm concerned. Fantastic fight, upset of the year. I was really delighted for Kambosos. Terrible performance by Lopez in the sense that he didn't seem to have any game plan or anything. His father displayed the worst corner work I can ever remember seeing in that fight. Not just his father, but the whole team. It was a shambles. Okay, but nevertheless, all credit to Kambosos. So he's won these titles. Suddenly he's burst onto the scene. And what does he do? Does he take an easy route? No, he wants Lomachenko. But Lomachenko's busy because of what's going on in Ukraine. So he says, give me the next best person. And it was Devin Haney. So Devin Haney went over to Australia twice and easily defeated Kambosos on points. There was a big upheaval in Kambosos' camp. There was, might have been a legal issue with him and his promoter, and there was, friction within the training camp and so on. Didn't do himself any favours there. I think money was at the heart of it as well for a lot of the disruption. But he lost twice to Haney. He then came back with a very debatable majority decision over Maxie Hughes. Now, a lot of people say that's a flat-out robbery. I actually, thinking about it, I had it closer. I think I made Hughes the winner, but only by a point or two. I can't remember. I'm doing this off memory. But I didn't think it was the great outrage that people thought it was. But most people said Maxie Hughes won that fight. And anyway, even if you think Kambosos won it, it was not an impressive performance by Kambosos. Okay, and it certainly, that was in 2023, and it certainly wasn't the type of fight to prepare you for taking on Vasily Lomachenko. And he fought Lomachenko earlier this year in May and got stopped in 11 rounds. So he's lost 3 of his last 4, one by stoppage. And the only win he's got is debatable. But he's ducked no one. He's ducked absolutely no one. You can never accuse George of being any... I like George. I like anyone that takes on everyone. But to get back to the point, was it wise, certainly having... Well, was it wise, after beating Lopez, to suddenly go looking for Lomachenko and then Haney? And, it's laudable, But certainly after being beaten twice by Haney and having that very, very questionable decision and rather poor performance against Maxi Hughes, was it right to jump straight back in with Lomachenko? I think that although I have massive respect for people that take on anyone, which Kambosos certainly does, and he's just one example, I'm using him as one example because that's the one that my subscriber mentioned. Is there such a thing as balance? Now, if you look at someone, I'm sure I'll pick someone in my lifetime. Let's take Nigel Benn. Nigel Benn, 26-0, 26 KOs, destroying everyone, bumps into Michael Watson and gets chinned in 6 rounds back in 1989, Finsbury Park, in a big tent. Remember it well. But what did he do, having been essentially humiliated? And he kind of quit in that fight because he was out of exhaustion, not out of fear, just out of exhaustion. He'd had his will broken and he was just knackered and he sort of mistimed the count, you know what I mean? So what did he do? He went off to America, took on people like Sandline Williams was one, like good quality journeymen who were going to take your rounds. And he had a couple of 10-rounders and it prepared him, that experience prepared him, it built up his confidence again. To take on Doug DeWitt, who he knocked out in 6 rounds, I think it was. And DeWitt was a tough guy. I mean, Ben could wallop, but DeWitt, I mean, he'd gone 12 rounds with Tommy Hearns. So that's how durable he was. And then Ben, that was for the WBO middleweight title. And then Ben fought, it was Iran Barkley, ambushed him, smashed him up in a round. 3 knockdown rule was in place, and Ben took advantage. Floored Barkley, did him in a round, and then he bumped into Eubank, and he lost to Eubank. So the comeback was on again. I mean, I'm not going to go through his whole career, but you know what I mean? He didn't, after losing to Watson, he didn't then jump in with a world-class killer. He fought a couple of very durable journeymen who took him rounds, and then he took on DeWitt, who wasn't, although he held a WBO belt, he wasn't one of the elite at middleweight. And he built himself up. Lennox Lewis is another one, another good example. Again, I'm using someone from my lifetime who I remember watching. Lewis, he was knocked out by, which one of his defeats should we pick? Well, how about we pick Oliver McCall, the first defeat? What did he do? He took a bit of time out. He got rid of Pepe Correa, who was never a very good trainer anyway. He was more of a cheerleader. He brought in Emmanuel Stewart. But what did Stewart do with him? He put him in there with, it was Lionel Butler, and I think Lewis. And Lewis looked, quite tentative, quite robotic. A bit like, like Joshua did when he came back from the 2 defeats to Usyk. It was almost like he was trying to do things that he'd been learning in the gym, and it was very pronounced and not that obvious, well, not that fluid, but a bit too obvious. And Lennox looked like that. He looked like that. He was trying out things, but he took, I think, was it 4 or 5 rounds to get rid of Butler? And Butler was a decent enough sort of C+ heavyweight. But Lennox was built up again to that rematch with McCall. And the rematch was a bizarre thing where McCall essentially had a nervous breakdown in the ring, and it remains the only stoppage win on his career, although he wasn't floored. He just refused to punch. He was crying his eyes out. Oh, it's the most bizarre thing you've ever seen. But Lennox was incrementally built up to that rematch. He wasn't just thrown straight in, And so, and no one would ever accuse Lennox Lewis of ducking anyone. Well, if they do, they're a fucking fool. But nevertheless, Stewart at the time recognised, I've got to build this guy up. We've got to work on things. I've got to build up his confidence, repair his psyche, if in case that's cracked through getting knocked out by McCall. He lost his belt. He had the WBC title and lost it. And we want him to be absolutely at his peak when he fights for the title again. So, in short, I think it was a very good question by Boxing Monkey. Very good point to make. He used Kambosos as a very good example. I think, as with most things in life, it's about balance. I think it's about accepting one's limitations, working within the parameters of those limitations, and maybe trying to expand those boundaries, if you like, and make it, work on things. It's not just about I'll fight anyone. Give me the best all in a row. That is laudable because you're a fighting man. That's to be admired. But it's not necessarily the wisest thing to do. You know, you can take your time and rebuild and work on things and improve and then take on the very best. Because when you think of Nigel Benn went from exhausting himself and essentially quitting against Michael Watson to knocking out Gerald McClellan in what it remains, and I've been watching boxing for over 45 years, it remains the best fight I've ever seen and the best performance by a British fighter. Incredible fortitude from Ben. You know, absolutely unbelievable against an absolute killer. As I've said before, I had money on McClellan to win in the first round, and I thought I was counting him in money when Ben went through the ropes, and then Ben got back in, and the rest was history. But anyway, the most insane fight I've ever seen, and the most embarrassing behaviour I've ever displayed watching a fight. I was pigging off the walls, and I've done that story before. Anyway, I'll tell you again that sometime. But anyway, yes, great to be prepared to fight anyone, but you have to use a bit of this as well, you know, and pick up the experience. Be wise about it. Be clever. Be crafty. You know. And then, of course, a shout out to journeymen who frequently fight the very best week in, week out. But they don't try to win a lot of the time. They just try to fiddle their way through it and survive and then collect the paycheck. But, you know, respect to the journeyman as well. Anyway, let me know what you think. Comments below as always. And please, if you are new to this channel, if you could subscribe, that takes a second and it helps us out a great deal. I'd really appreciate that. And also hit the like button because they count them. For some reason, they count them. I still don't know why, but it's all about algorithms. I don't even know what an algorithm is, but come on, I'm old man. You know, it's all this technology bullshit just winds me up. But anyway, enough of that. Thank you very much. I'll get you later, and bye for now.